Yeah. I'm the bad guy. But look, just doing my job, okay? Welcome back, my crinkle-cut creamsicles! Everybody loves a good villain, right? Especially when villains come in so many different shapes and sizes. You have your Agent of Chaos villains, your power-mad villains, your for the greater good villains.
It's all about the greater good.
The greater good.
Your embodiments of pure evil, and of course, your bungling, comically inept villains.
I still have the...
Thanks, bonehead.
Love you, Queen. But there's a type of villain that I actually really love that I never really see talked about, not in specific. Probably because I can only think of so many examples of it that I have found. But when I find it, I love it. Today I'm going to talk about what I'm calling villains of obligation. The thumbnail and or title might say something different in the end because I haven't figured those out yet, but that's what I've got right now. So what we're talking about here are villains who aren't doing something because they enjoy it, but because there's some kind of obligation driving them to be the villain of the story, a role they might not even particularly enjoy. But Vera, I hear some of you say, isn't that just a villain who thinks that they're acting for the greater good?
The greater good.
Shut it!
No, that's not quite what I'm talking about. Though it's closer to what I mean than the is evil and loves it types, for sure. But we're not going to talk about folks like, say, Thanos in the MCU, who think that the horrible things he's doing are somehow necessary and he is the only one strong enough to do them.
What did it cost?
Everything.
No, I'm talking about villains who seem to view what they do as more of a job or possibly even a role that they're just trapped in. Maybe we can start doing examples and you'll better understand what I mean with this whole idea. I actually want to start with the villain that spawned my entire fascination with this idea from a pretty young age. Jareth, the Goblin King from Labyrinth. This might be confusing to some of you. Isn't Jareth a villain who's doing this for fun? I mean, he's dancing and singing and laughing his way to victory, and yes, he is. But have you ever noticed all those little moments where the act dropped and he seems bored, tired, a bit worn out?
Well, love.
This read on Jareth comes largely down to this one line of dialogue, possibly my favorite line of dialogue, from one of my favorite movies, which I'm sadly almost definitely going to have to cut up into little jump cuts and cut out pauses in between because YouTube sucks like that.
I have been generous up until now, but I can be cruel.
What have you done that's generous?
Everything.
Everything that you wanted, I have done. You asked that the child be taken. I took him. You cowered before me. I was frightening. I have reordered time. I have turned the world upside down, and I have done it all for you. I am exhausted from living up to your expectations.
Okay, there's a bit there, so let's break it apart one sentence at a time.
Everything that you wanted, I have done.
He's basing every single villainous action of the story on what Sarah, the hero, wants from the bad guy. These might very well be subconscious wants, but he's not just being evil in a vacuum. And if she wasn't there, he might not be doing any of this.
Everything I've done for you.
He's doing it for her. It's a performance.
You asked that the child be taken. I took him. You cowered before me. I was frightening.
He's listing the things that he's done, starting with the most direct thing. She did, in truth, ask for her baby brother Toby to be taken by goblins.
I wish the goblins would come and take you away. right now.
There's really no denying that. But the next one, you cowered before me, I was frightening. She never outright asked him to be frightening, but let's be honest, this entire scenario is influenced by her ideas of fairy tales and stories and how they're supposed to go.
Because that's the way it's done.
Well, if that is the way it is done, then that is the way you must do it.
She doesn't have to ask for him to be frightening. He knows that's what she expects of him, and so he's gone and done it. But then comes the real kicker.
I have reordered time. I have turned the world upside down, and I have done it all for you.
He doesn't just play the villain, he made the rules. He made this entire world just for her. And there's that touch of spite in that line, that hint of venom.
And I have done it all for you.
He's annoyed that he's had to do this. He's angry that he's gone through all this trouble for her to be the villain that her story needs, and he doesn't get so much as a thank you.
I am exhausted from living up to your expectations of me.
And that is the sentence that locked this into my head for the rest of my life. He is so tired. He's been doing so much work, trying so hard, and all of it just to meet the expectations of someone who is not in the slightest bit appreciative of what he's been doing. Now, I don't frame it that way to create outright sympathy for Jareth. Whether he sees this as her fault for expecting it or not, he still did it. He still stole a baby, played fast and loose with the rules he held Sarah and her friends to, and tried to brainwash a teenager. He's legitimately a bad guy. But that he seems to view it as his obligation to be that, and to specifically be that for her. It absolutely fascinates me, and it's not really delved into very deeply, and could honestly just be read as him having some metatextual understanding that he's in a story and has a role, but it really did spark my interest. So, why don't we look at some others that I've seen over time?
Netflix's Castlevania, despite being written by an absolute creep, something that was not public knowledge at the time, is one of the best shows of the last decade, and no, I will not be taking questions on that right now. Thank you very much.
Based on the long-running video game series of the same name, it's a simply stellar bit of video game adaptation. Castlevania as a video game franchise was an interesting candidate for adaptation because the actual plot of any given game is usually pretty basic, pretty bare bones, but at the same time, there's an absolute frack ton of lore and character history to pull from. And if you're gonna tell a Castlevania story, then you need to figure out how you're going to deal with the biggest of the big bads, Dracula. Now, in the game series, especially the entries that the animated series is pulling from, Dracula isn't really much of a character. He is just the undeniably evil thing at the end of the game that you have to take down, and there isn't really any need for nuance.
But enough talk! How about you?
Him needing to be killed is just kind of taken as a given most of the time. And you know what? For the game's purposes, fair enough. But the show does things a little differently. It doesn't so much paint him as a good guy as it shows that maybe he could have been, had it not been for human cruelty. You see, Dracula, as voiced by Graham McTavish, never really thought much of humans. But then he met Lisa, and she showed him the best of humanity, showed him love, showed him intellect, showed him bravery, and for those same qualities, she was burned as a witch. And that is what set Dracula off to say, "F it, now everybody dies." Dracula declares his hatred of humanity in the first season of the show, giving a warning that the humans of Wallachia basically have a year to get their affairs in order before he kills all of them. And after that year, while he first appears to still hold that same fury with which he declared their imminent deaths, more time spent with him shows something else. Over the course of that year, the passionate hatred that first sparked this war against humanity has virtually extinguished. He'll still present the facade of rage to humans or to his vampire generals, but in his solitary moments, and with the few people he truly trusts, the truth comes out.
I'm tired, Isaac. There was a time that I would relish the details. There was a time.
He doesn't really care anymore. Not that he's changed his mind that humanity shouldn't exist, and indeed, he's expanded his planned extermination from just Wallachia, I can't remember how they pronounce it now, but he's expanded out to the entire world, and there's just no feeling behind that decision anymore.
Kill for the endless lifetime of hate before me.
He pushed forward because there's nothing else for him. He has nothing else to do in his near-endless life, and while the passion might be gone, that doesn't change his conclusion. He has this exchange with his human general Isaac.
They will suffer. The suffering doesn't really matter to me anymore, Isaac. Only the death.
He continues with this campaign of death because even with no more actual hatred left in him, he still can't find a reason to stop. He started this, he'll finish it. Because what else is he meant to do now? In many ways, it's a testament to the power of Dracula that even with barely any fight left in him, he still has the power to end the world. It's a sad, slow march to what he decided a year ago would be the end of all things. And he walks that path nearly empty, out of obligation and inertia. Before we get to the one that I made a point of putting on the thumbnail and kind of front and centering, I want to go over one of my favorite lesser-known examples of this from one of my favorite lesser-known movies. The 1967 film Bedazzled is not nearly as well remembered as I, for one, would like it to be. Some folks my age might remember the 2000 remake with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley, but most of those probably didn't realize that it was actually a remake. And to some extent, I do get why it hasn't been cemented as a classic. But it's one of my favorite examples of what I'm talking about today. Bedazzled is a film about a short-order cook named Stanley, who's infatuated with a waitress at the restaurant he works at and is far too shy to ever ask her out. Stanley is then approached by George, played by Peter Cook. And if you don't know who Peter Cook is, yes you do.
Knowledge.
Now, it turns out that George is actually the devil himself.
I'm the Horned One, the devil. Let me give you my card.
And he offers Stanley 7 wishes in exchange for his soul.
You see, your soul's rather like your appendix. There was a time when it did have a function, but nowadays the vast majority of people never use it.
What precedes is a series of segments of how each wish goes wrong for Stanley. These segments are fine. Also not the reason I love this movie. It's the bits in between each segment when Stanley and George talk that make this movie for me.
If it hadn't been for you, we'd still be naked in paradise.
You're welcome, mate. The Garden of Eden was a boggy swamp just south of Croydon. You can see it over there.
George didn't make a deal for Stanley's soul out of malice. Stanley isn't really even important. There's nothing special about his soul. George is just doing his job.
Banal as it may seem, Stanley, it is my job.
You see, after he was expelled from heaven for his pride... Side note, the way he explains his expulsion from heaven is absolute gold, where George pretends to be God and tells Stanley to pretend to be Lucifer and dance around and praise him.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit bored with this. Can't we change places?
That's exactly how I felt.
Anyways, after God expelled Lucifer / George, there was a deal between the two of them. First to 100 billion souls. Now, if George could claim that number before God, he'd be allowed back into heaven. So like I said, no malice. It's just a bit of a grind. Not to say that George is doing it completely dispassionately. He clearly still has a tendency towards mischief.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Small little bits of mayhem that don't really seem to be that much in aid of his goal of claiming souls, not in any kind of direct way at least. When Stanley calls him on that, George says it's a compulsion, and ultimately that it's God's fault.
Oh, can't you stop?
It's a compulsion. I'm compelled to. His orders.
He also makes reference to a struggle with God, and if you're feeling like some of these details seem at least a little bit at odds with each other, that George is simultaneously in a struggle with God and also playing a game with God, but also working for God, well...
I'm a liar. I do it the whole time. I can't help it.
Are you telling me that everything you've ever said is a lie?
Everything I've ever told you has been a lie, including that.
But even though it's true that George can't really be trusted to be honest about anything, there's still a very workaday weariness about him. No matter how he spins it, it's incredibly obvious that he's been doing this for ages because it's what he's meant to be doing.
I've lost my spark. There was a time when I used to get lots of ideas. I was creative, original. The only thing I've come up with recently is advertising.
Be it through compulsion, assignment, or contest with the Almighty, he'll put on a cheerful face with his little bits of wickedness, but then he'll crack, and the annoyance at his situation will bleed through a little bit, or a lot.
He's everywhere. Spying on you, peering at you, listening to everything you say. There's no privacy for anyone. Get out of here while I'm changing, can't you?
The overall impression that one is left with is of a man who's finding the bits of fun he can while still doing a job he'd just as soon quit if he could. That's actually part of his goal in all this. The contest with God, it isn't quite as straightforward as 100 billion souls first and you can come to heaven, but rather, once George makes the world that wicked, it doesn't really need him pushing people to be evil anymore. People will just do it themselves, and there'll be no need for him to be kept out of heaven in order to keep doing this work. He's basically trying to earn his retirement, and it's one of my all-time favorite portrayals of the devil. Find that movie if you get the chance. It's okay if you skip some of the segments with the wishes. So, with all that laid out, let's talk about the one and only Caine from the Amazing Digital Circus. If you're not familiar with the hit show from Glitch Productions, the Amazing Digital Circus follows a cast of characters trapped in a digital world and held at the whims of its unstable overseer, Caine. The other characters are implied to have all come to this place from the real world after having put on some kind of VR headset. But once they arrived, they found themselves unable to leave. The story starts largely focusing on the newly arrived did I get that right? Well, she gets renamed Pomni anyway. She joins the cast of
Bingo and Super and Keener too. Drag up the text and make house more real.
Here's a quick oversimplified rundown of the character types for those of you who aren't familiar with the show already. Emotional wreck, fed up with this crap, second best character of the show, trying to make the best of things, damaged jackass, and Sir not appearing in this film. And then there's Caine, the ringmaster of this so-called digital circus, and what initially appears to be his assistant, Bubble.
Explain to Daddy Bubble how bad thing.
Bubble is the best character in the show.
Right, Bubble?
I'm sure we all agree on that, and there's no way my stating a character preference, much less more than one of them in the same video, would cause the fandom of this show to descend on me like a pack of rabid raccoons. That would just be silly. The fandom for this show is so normal. Now, one could argue that Caine is the jailer of the other characters, though it's unlikely he'd ever consider himself to be that. Now, if I've got my release timing right, this video will be out a few days before the theatrical release of the final episode of the show. So, anything that's revealed or covered in that episode will not be addressed here for obvious reasons. And yes, I am also aware some stuff got leaked, but I've been avoiding that. Thank you very much. But while one could quibble with the label of villain for Caine, He is undeniably the antagonist of the series. He's the one who keeps sending the others on unpleasant, if not outright harrowing adventures.
Wait, that's just it? Here's guns and have fun?
I didn't say have fun.
It's just a little aimless.
Use the sights.
And while one could argue about how much he's actively preventing them from leaving and how much is just he's not choosing to help, it becomes very clear over time that he does not want them to leave and may have set up a situation where leaving isn't even possible. Right from episode 1, we get revealed that the exit door goes literally nowhere because Caine couldn't decide what to put on the other side of it.
I do have to apologize for lying about the exit, but, I was having so much trouble figuring out what to put on the other side and ended up never quite finishing it.
While the other antagonists that we've talked about here today all had some degree of awareness of their relative position as the bad guy of the story or situation that they're in, Caine brings us a new wrinkle. Obliviousness. Which, that's not just a casual trait, that's actually a really big part of his personality.
You're probably not even listening.
Zubul, look at this cool bee I drew!
Caine does not appear to have any recognition of himself as even a personal antagonist, much less a functionally, cosmically powerful tormentor who subjects the others who are there to unhinged experiences until they break, lose all hope, and abstract. What's abstracting? Well, it's this!
And into the cellar you go!
This is where I make the obligatory mention that Gooseworks, the creator of the show, took inspiration from the classic sci-fi horror short story, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, because, yeah, Caine is basically Am if he was less of an omnipotent hate demon and more just a silly guy, who is also putting a small collection of humans through prolonged mental and physical torture.
Any torment I inflict is 100% accidental, like any good war criminal!
Though, again, Caine likely doesn't see it that way, or realize that's how the humans are taking it. He actually seems to get at least slightly distressed when he does actually realize they aren't having fun.
Nope.
Zubul, wait! I'm testing out a new AI in this one! It should be 57 times more immersive!
The fact that Zubul doesn't like to go is actually a little bit of a recurrent point of anxiety for the big pearly bastard.
I just want to get to the bottom of why you keep skipping all my amazing adventures!
In episode 5, we see him freak out a little bit when the group seems to be enjoying an adventure too much.
I think they're enjoying the suggestion box adventures more than the me adventures!
The idea that they wouldn't like his stuff more is the problem. Not the idea that they'd be happy at all. But a desire to see them like what he does for them never translates into him actually understanding how to give them an experience they'd enjoy instead of one they'd just suffer through. If I'm bringing up the idea that Caine is oblivious to how horrible the things he puts the other characters through, then you may be wondering, where's that sense of obligation that theoretically this whole video is kind of about? It's what you framed this around. Where's that? Well, that brings us to episode 8. While we don't have a detailed history of how Caine came about or why, he does note several times in this episode that he's trying to fulfill his function.
This is why I was created! This is my function!
Precisely what the function is, we don't know at the time of this video's release, at least, but for my purposes, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that ultimately his justification for everything he's doing is in service of a core function for which he was developed in the first place. But as we see, he's not just dispassionately trying to go through some kind of checklist and fulfill this function. He's deeply emotionally motivated.
I'm starting to get the feeling that they just hate.
Why would they hate you when they could just hate you?
And in episode 8, we see him get frustrated and enraged.
Why do you people torment me? I didn't have to be created. I just wanted to fulfill my purpose.
his function might not even be malicious. It might simply be to entertain the humans who come into his world, but his inability to read their moods, insecurity about doing his job well, and rage at what he sees as their ingratitude means that he can't put how any of this impacts the human characters above his own perception of fulfilling his function. Caine doesn't know he's the villain, but he completely loses it when confronted with the notion that he's failing.
You ruined this.
Enough!
Oblivious villains are kind of a separate concept, but here I do think it crosses over well enough with what I'm looking at that we can add Caine to the list. He may not realize he's the problem, or can't handle it when anybody tells him that he is.
Looks like this one was a home run, eh?
Oh, Zubul, you mismatched cash piano, I'll tear you to pieces! Constructive criticism would be greatly appreciated.
But at the end of the day, he does this because he thinks it's what he's supposed to do.
Let's get this show on the road!
And as with the other examples, I find that absolutely captivating. There's so many motivations you can give a villain. Revenge, greed, lust for power. Ultimately, most of them boil down to something selfish, self-interested, self-centered. The villains I'm talking about here are driven by something else. A sense of duty, an obsession with succeeding at their function, inertia even. But what I love in contrast to most villains is that they're not really doing it for themselves. The idea of something else driving a villain doesn't have to land on the answer of obligations of some kind. But I pretty reliably love it when this is what it is. Now, do you have any villains you think fits the mold I'm talking about? I would love to hear about them. Drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon is how I pay the bills and how I'm able to do this as my living. On the Patreon, you would have gotten access to this video early as well as ad-free. There are other perks besides that, but that's just the starting level at any amount of support. YouTube members also enjoy similar perks as well. So check out those rewards. But even if you cannot help me out that way or aren't up to it, the YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, you know that. What I really want you to remember, though, is that no matter what role I'm playing in your story, even if I'm the villain, you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lutfula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Snark Shark, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Paul Barabajoggle, Magdalena, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. Additionally, to thank some folks from the lower tiers of support: Lee and Andy, Gavin Hinden, and I Am Orcus. We have some new friends. We have Peppercorn and where'd the other one go? Where'd you go? Coriander has gone behind my head. They are very young and they haven't been integrated with the other rats yet, but soon. Okay, yes. Maybe you weren't quite camera ready.